Hey, you were zoning out. Rough shift? Yeah, I know. Well, no use in dwelling on things we can't change, right? Now, what was the story you wanted me to tell? Oh, yeah, I remember now. That's quite a recent one, all things considered. There are quite a few people in fallen London who swear that they were there. They sold them a crate of supplies, talked to them while waiting in line for bread years ago. Well, maybe they're telling the truth. The Salt Historian's story actually starts with their mother, the brilliant historian. She was one of a kind, as a person and as a historian, beautiful and strong willed and captivating. She didn't spend much time with her child at all, always very dedicated to her work. Seeing the kid almost like a distant cousin rather than her own flesh and blood. Some even wondered how she even found enough time to push the child out, such was her indifference towards them. There was gossip about it, of course, but you know how people are. Nothing better to do. Anyways, the one who would one day become the salt historian was very young when the brilliant historian was lost at sea. The ship came back, the captain, the usual percentage of surviving sailors, but she was missing. Everyone claimed they didn't know where she'd gone. She just disappeared one day. 100 different rumors with 100 different variations, each started floating around almost immediately. Eventually the gossip became old, but the flavor of making up horror stories surrounding the fate of the brilliant historian never fell out of fashion amongst friends huddled in corners in the dark, children avoiding their bedtime, and all other situations that call for whispers. Not unlike what we're doing now, I guess. Well, as my father always said, if his father were a famous poet, he'd become a pro poker player, as far away from comparison as possible. But fate is difficult to flee from, and the unfortunate child became interested in history. Not really having a specific topic of interest, simply pursuing anything that interested them at any particular moment, they came to be known as the underwhelming historian. They say that, well, put a pin on that. I'm getting ahead of myself. The underwhelming historian knew that people laughed at them behind their back, but they never managed to gauge why. It had to do with their mother, that was easy enough to guess. Was it because they hadn't known her well, because she didn't have a grave, because they didn't know her destiny? They latched onto that idea, I think because it was easier. I mean, think about it. Is it easier to get the navigation records from the captain with your "I'm family" leverage, scout the area they were in when she went missing, and if you don't find anything, you can at least publish a good hypothesis? Or realize that everyone's comparing the two of you every step of the way, and then try to match the brilliant historian's discoveries? I mean, it's the brilliant historian. The way she writes, her vision, the things she discovered. You know what I mean. In a way, they were always meant to become what they have. Well, with the belief that everyone looked down on them for not making an effort for the memory of their mother, they marched down to the retired Z captain's town mansion. But the captain refused to hand the papers over, no matter how much the underwhelming historian pleaded. The retired Z captain, still retaining all the authority from his Z days, raised a hand, asking for silence. Spare your words. You don't last 35 years at Z if you're spineless and soft-hearted. I'll call in my lawyer, and I'll make an addition to my will. When I die, you get the papers. I don't think it's necessary to add a clause against foul play, from what I heard of you. In the meantime, I'll enjoy my retirement, and I suggest you go to Z. You need the knowledge if you plan to look into her disappearance. A spark of inspiration blessed the underwhelming historian as soon as they stepped back onto the streets of London. They found the most vain and pretentious captain docked in the city at that moment and offered to write their biography in exchange for apprenticeship. They were turned down, not because they were in their early 20s with virtually no Z knowledge, but because their mother's name outshone the vain captain's one. But there's plenty of fish in the Z, and another captain took up their offer. If you've ever heard any epic tales about the South historian, they're probably set in this time period. Many would give up both their legs and their right arm for the diaries and records of this time period, but, well, all we have now are the stories of sailors, and you know how much those are worth. Only one thing's for sure. On one of their many voyages, the underwhelming historian was talking to some workers at the Salt Lions, and on that day, they said what they always said to any outsider. Lost faces are sacred to salt, they say. The underwhelming historian had never given the gods of the sea much thought. Stone, storm, and salt, all very well. The sailors seemed uneasy about salt worship, but that was the last thing on their mind. It was comforting that there was a place for all that was forgotten. After all, wasn't it the natural course of things to be forgotten? These ruminations came sporadically, as the underwhelming historian was often busy with more practical matters. But the thoughts slowly salted their brain. Why were they trying to uncover and register things if the natural course of it all was to be forgotten? One random day when coming back to London, the news finally came. The retired Z captain had passed. Going over his papers was a swift matter. Everything was neatly organized. And to their surprise, the captain's old ship had been restored and handed over to them, along with the papers. Right there in those documents, a mystery was solved. No one on that ship ever said a thing about the brilliant historian's disappearance, because the ship doubled as a highly illegal submarine, and according to the logs, they were underwater when she vanished. If there had been an investigation, yeah. As all know, the Z changes, so after verifying and re-verifying coordinates, the underwhelming historian and their vain captain set off to Nuke. Its water changes people. People live in the water. It's an anarchic quasi-civilization. Any number of things could have happened in that no man's land. The search lasted for weeks, diving and trying to communicate with the Nuke residents, going back to the submarine, diving back, trying to get a good look at their faces through floating hair. And here accounts diverge. Some say that they found the brilliant historian there, now the sharp-eyed swimmer. Others say that she wasn't there, at least not anymore, and years later, the underwhelming historian found a sharp-eyed drownee in Dahut, forever longing for Nook, but Nook folk despised her for whatever reason. But does it matter? The water of Nook probably took a toll on their system, and either way, their mom told them this. I left. What did it matter? Be remembered, get your portrait, register, lose and lose and lose just to get a detail right. What for when you can swim and swim and swim? Nook. Freedom. You can't fall when you're swimming. Well, and that was that. They sailed back to London. They continued as the vain captain's biographer. At this point in life, they didn't even feel like publishing their discoveries. Thoughts of salt and forgotten faces just kept their mind busy, I guess. It's said that the changes were slow brewing, though. The words of the sharp-eyed swimmer, salt, their travels, all the ruins you see out at sea. Well, eventually, their travels led them to Scrimshander, the city of remembrance. Any historian would be ecstatic to visit, and maybe the underwhelming historian was, and maybe that's why they snapped. All the ship records, the biography, their diaries, everything was given to the Z before anyone could do anything about it. The van captain fled as soon as possible, worried that the historian had turned murderous. The underwhelming historian was now the salt historian, and they roamed the archives of Scrimshander, memorizing and then destroying the bone fragments containing any and all kinds of invaluable history, killing anyone who dared to stand between them and their holy mission. It's funny, they became sort of the moon to the brilliant historian's sun, her mirror image. No, more like one of Mrs. Planty's carnival mirrors, twisted, inverted. And no one ever saw their face again. Maybe they were all tricks of light and shadow, or maybe something happened to it. Lost faces are sacred to salt, after all. Oh, Scrimshander swears on its bones that they took care of the salt historian years ago. But who knows? Who, in all of the Neath, tells the whole truth, just like that? Well, I have to go. You know that my father is waiting for me. See you around, yeah?